Coalition discussions are now inevitable between political parties. They seem to have accepted the fate as they are already talking about possible coalition partners. But will they find common ground on policies and other critical aspects of a successful coalition? Political economist Mandla Isaacs joins me now to discuss this further. Very good evening, Mandla. Thank you so much for joining us this evening here on eNCA. So first up, how does one go about seeking potential coalition partners? Is it really all about similar ideologies, or is it more about how the cake is actually cut?
Well, good evening. It's going to be a bit of both. Typically, the largest parties kind of have the moral authority to start those discussions. Even though, to use an example of Johannesburg, for example, the ANC will not be able. Looks like it will not be able to form a government without either one of the EFF, the DA, or Action SA. And so it'll have to make a decision about does it look to its left to the EFF, or does it look to its right? And that's going to be quite a wicked dilemma for the ANC, because when you do that, you're going to be, I think if you look to the left, I think the solutions are not necessarily there in terms of some of the populist and kind of socialist utopian policies of the EFF. But if you look to the right, where perhaps there might be some of the market-oriented solutions that we need, you're going to be potentially alienating part of your base, especially when the DA has been the traditional, punching bag or adversary that the ANC uses to hype up its base at elections, saying that it's the party of white privilege. So then what do you say to your supporters if you find yourself needing to work closely with that party and agree on policies?
So who's disenfranchised here? It's the people that voted for either party, isn't it?
Well, it's complicated, right? So first of all, the electorate encompasses all of these parts of the ideological spectrum. So in some ways, coalitions are positive in that it forces parties to find common ground, not to just govern for their own base and their own supporters. But on the other hand, it creates difficulties for parties because it makes it difficult for them to draw distinctions between themselves and their opponents. Even on the other side, if you're the opposition, like the DA or Action SA, and your base is largely voting for you because they frankly want an end to ANC governance. If you find yourself governing with the ANC, how do you keep your voters engaged and excited and avoid them feeling like that you're essentially compromising or giving too much away? So that's kind of the challenge for all of these parties is, on the one hand, governance requires you to compromise with these parties, but on the other hand, if you're seen to compromise too much, you could end up losing support of important parts of your constituency who, if they feel that you're giving up on some of the core principles, which is why they voted for you in the first place.
So I'd be positive about all this. Can all these different ideologies usher in, how can I put this, a new economic landscape, maybe something for the better?
Well, I certainly think there's room in the center ground, right, towards the middle. So I do think that the ANC could use perhaps a bit of the DA and Action SA's focus on creating an enabling business environment, having more efficient state functions and regulations and processes, and perhaps the DA and Action SA can learn a bit from the ANC's focus on broad-based empowerment and having policies which benefit the poor and the previously disadvantaged. For example, the DA tends to focus on a district-based model where within a city they want tax revenues from different parts of the city to stay in that part of the city. But that arguably could reinforce, apartheid spatial planning if the resources from the suburbs stay only in the suburbs. So perhaps they could learn something from the ANC, which says that we actually have to put resources in developing the townships and trying to undo some of these policies. So perhaps there are areas in the center ground for the different parties to converge and ultimately deliver to the people of South Africa, because as Deng Xiaoping said, I don't care what color the cat is as long as it catches mice. And South Africans want these parties to catch mice. They want them to create jobs, to create cleaner, safer, more efficient communities, and improve their quality of life.
Mandla, lastly, you've got national government policies and initiatives, and you're looking at the DA governing certain municipalities, even a certain province to a large extent. Is there a clash there? Is that maybe sometimes where we fail?
Could you just repeat the question?
I'm talking about you've got national government policies and initiatives, and then you've got coalitions coming together with different ideologies. Do you see a clash there at all?
So, I mean, you raise a good point. So very often the DA has complained that some of the things they're trying to do at local level are frustrated by national government and vice versa. So if the ANC is cooperating with some of these parties at local level, it may then be forced to create more integration or smoother working relationships between the different tiers of government. So we're definitely going to see, complexity in how these parties manage this diffusion of power, both horizontally at local level, but also vertically at national and provincial level, as more of these tiers start to go to different parties and you no longer have the same vertical integration that the ANC has become used to and unfortunately not done enough with.
Yep. The message in the bottle sometimes just doesn't get there. That could be a bit of a problem. Okay, thank you so much, political economist Mandla Isaacs, just talking to us about the complexities of forming coalitions and making those coalitions effective. Of course, we want them to be effective because that's the coalface, isn't it, where people actually meet government.